He can sign with any team. He is now a free agent. This is video of the Raiders facility in Alameda. The team stretching, getting ready. They're practicing, moving on without Antonio Brown after releasing him this morning. A lot of reactions coming in from around the NFL. Let's get some of our own from our own Mike Silver, as well as our own David Carr, who obviously has a relationship with this franchise, especially the franchise quarterback being his older brother. David, initially, just off the bat, your reaction to today's events.
It's disappointing. I mean, everyone had hopes. Everyone tried to make it work out. I think Antonio wanted to be a Raider. I think the Raiders wanted him to come out and play good football for him. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, and it was something that it's very difficult. So they're trying to hash it out, trying to figure out, where they're going next. But from a player standpoint, they have to just move forward, and they kind of had to do that a couple days ago with what went on with Mike Mayock and that whole situation. So the players were always just trying to compartmentalize and focus on the Monday Night Football game, and then they had what was going on kind of beyond their control going on also. So I think the word is probably relief that it's over, probably for both sides. I mean, there's some things on from Antonio's side too that he wasn't happy about, clearly, or he wouldn't have expressed his opinion. So I'm concerned for Antonio, honestly, because I don't think that it's probably not normal behavior, and that's kind of concerning, just because I've gotten to know him a little bit, and I think that the players genuinely liked him. I think that he's a great football player, and for whatever reason, the communication between the management or the head coach, and that's the thing. John Gruden had his back, so it's just really kind of confusing for people that are thinking clearly to try and rationalize it. That's the difficult part right now. So that's where the players are. They're trying to just move past, go, realize they got a football game against Vic Fangio and Von Miller and all these guys, and then at the same time kind of say goodbye to a guy that they thought was going to be with them.
Yeah, and relationships fall apart in the NFL a lot of the times, probably not as fast as this one did. Mike Silver with us as well. Mike, you wrote about this several weeks ago, starting with the cryo injury as well as the helmet issue kind of bubbling up, and you saw it bubbling to this point.
Yeah, and David, now that we have you here, I would ask you this. You've been a franchise quarterback in very hard conditions. You know how hard that job is. Your brother now is, trying to be that guy for a team that is moving in a year. They've been dealing with this situation. They had Hard Knocks opening up that window for the world, at least some of it. And it's a lot, and it's a hard enough job anyway to be that guy. And we've seen Derek do it at a very high level in the past. How stressful is this situation for a young quarterback trying to, lead a team?
I think it's incredibly stressful. And in my conversations with him up to about 7 o'clock this morning, it was incredibly stressful, and it was difficult to make sense of what's going on and then still try and get the team ready to go play a game in 2 days. The word that he used and the word that was kind of made the point to me was relief, and not that he's happy to see Antonio go, because he's spent more time with Antonio Brown than literally any player that he's ever worked with. Devontae Adams lives in the Bay Area in the offseason. They're best friends. He spent more time with Antonio Brown this offseason than he did with Devontae. And I think that is the frustrating part and the difficult part for Derek. But there's also a relief, like a huge sigh of relief that, okay, now that drama is kind of behind us, we can move forward with the focus of our football team. They would have loved to have Antonio Brown. Make no mistake, Derek was a huge Antonio Brown when he met him at the Pro Bowl. He's been a huge fan of him since then, and he still is. He's disappointed that it didn't work out, but from a quarterback standpoint, he's relieved that he can just go kind of be that now.
And I guess the follow-up question I have for you, David, is, you've got a coach and a new regime trying to instill rules and a culture. They're telling 52 guys, hey, this is the way it is, this is what we're doing, and clearly having to bend those rules or amend them for the other one. I would also imagine that it would be easier for them to coach the other 52 now that you don't have the dichotomy between them and one guy who is, adhering
Sure.
to his own standards.
I agree. And honestly, talented players are treated different. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't even care what any coach says. Bill Belichick treats Tom Brady differently. He treats Rob Gronkowski differently when he was playing with them, whether he says he does or he doesn't. That's just the nature of it. Bill Parcells treated Lawrence Taylor differently. So John Gruden treated Antonio Brown different. And that's okay. It's the norm. But when it gets to a point where you have guys like Vontaze Burfict that have obviously had their own run-ins with it, whether it be the coaching staff or teams or management, for him and a group of guys to come together and say, whatever you decide to do in this situation, we're with you. If he's no longer on our team, it's fine, based on what we've seen. That kind of tells you where you're at as an organization. So you have 52 guys that have kind of bought into what they're trying to do as a team. And unfortunately, there's just one that wasn't. And they had no choice here. I mean, John Gruden gave them every chance possible. It just didn't work out.
And Derek, looking at the relationship, as you said, that David spent more time with Antonio Brown than any player he's ever worked with over the course of an offseason. When you say relief, is it just that being in a place where perhaps a player had a disagreement with management or with a coaching staff, that disagreement is now gone? He just doesn't have to worry about managing that relationship?
Yeah, exactly. It's not that he's happy that Antonio is no longer with the team. I think that he's probably extremely disappointed. He just in our private conversations and when he would come over, he was so excited to get a chance to play with him. He just couldn't believe, like we were talking about fantasy the other day, like just randomly our family has a fantasy football team. We're kind of going through it. He's kind of being quiet on the group text, but then kind of randomly about halfway through it, he's like, yeah, but Derek Carr has Antonio Brown. And so he was genuinely excited up until like 4 days ago of having a chance to play with this guy. And the relationship he thought was in a good place, and he was disappointed. And the relief factor is from just a running the football team from the quarterback position, that there's so much that goes on his plate. And Gruden asked him to do a lot at the line of scrimmage with the offense. He's got a lot of control at the line of scrimmage. There's so much that you have to just kind of weed through from just getting ready to play a game from a quarterback standpoint. The relief is just not having the extra stuff that he had to deal with and answer questions about, and has his brother texting him and say, hey, dude, I need something to say on the NFL Network when I go on. Like that. I think that's the relief part of it. So, yeah, that's exactly what he's thinking.
Listen, it's going to be frustrating for the Raiders, and we're sitting here speculating about where he might end up. It's going to be obviously very frustrating for the organization if he suddenly goes somewhere else and goes into the fold, doesn't exhibit this kind of behavior, and is productive. But I think we should really listen to what David is saying, because he understands this on a level that most of us don't, having been in this world and obviously being able to text the starting quarterback and talk to him. And when he says he does not seem like he's behaving in a rational fashion and that the behavior is erratic, I'm concerned too. And I think we tend to see this only in football terms and transactional terms and sensationalistic terms. But, what little I can tell from the outside is that this seems to be a guy who's crying out for help in some sort of way. And I don't want to paint him as a tragic figure or a victim, but I do think that he is someone who is not necessarily making rational decisions right now. And that makes it hard for me to envision him just going to some new team, following their rules, not having outbursts, and being the same productive guy he's always been. And I hope that he is able to get into a better headspace. And there are ways to do that. You don't have to do that alone. There are ways to do that, and I hope that that's what happens.
Yeah, we can all hope that everybody out there can be in a solid headspace. We don't want to speculate about anybody's mental health. Of course, we'll leave that up to the mental health professionals. But we did see from Antonio Brown himself that the criticism was starting to have an impact on the way that he felt. He felt like he was being a villain. And certainly there's a lot of people with reactions for him today. Thanks to David Carr as well as Mike Silver joining us here on NFL Now as we move forward towards kickoff. Conference USA game set to come up in just over an hour. We'll be back at Raiders practice as they are without Antonio Brown.